Welcome everyone to this Talent Toolbox session on raising your rates. Please note that the tips and suggestions that we're going to be discussing today are built from best practices and established methods with proven track records of success, but know that ultimately you are responsible for your own business as an independent professional. Okay, so my name is Will Simpson. I am an Upwork event manager, and we're joined today by Tiffany Fort from our Upwork coaching team. Welcome, Tiffany.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming.
All right, so what we're going to be covering today is determining your value, increasing your rates, and navigating rate increase conversations. And just as a quick note, throughout the presentation, if you have a specific question, please drop it in the Q&A section rather than the chat. The chat moves quite quickly and your question can easily get lost in translation. So go ahead and drop in the Q&A. We'll most likely get to them at the end of the presentation unless I see one that's sort of super topical to what we're discussing. So I'd like to start us off with a bit of context before we dive into the meat of this. So many of us undervalue and undercharge for our services. And this is for a variety of reasons, such as being new to being an independent professional, pulse on what our peer group is delivering and charging, because we're all sort of isolated working remotely. Or our second bullet point here, a very important one, imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is real for many of us throughout our journey, whether we're just starting off or we're trying to break through to that next tier of clients and projects. It's worth taking stock and doing periodic self-assessments to properly determine your value and establish confidence in that understanding. This confidence, or lack thereof, is almost palpable when communicating with clients. Think like when you've been on a job interview and you are interviewing while you already have a job versus when you interview and you've been unemployed for a year. You come across differently. It's almost impossible to hide it from my experience. Now, you are the sum of your parts in a sense. So I do graphic design on the Upwork platform as a freelancer and have for a few years now, but my background is primarily in business development and operations. Now, I leverage this background to instill confidence in my clients that I will not only handle their project professionally, but I'm going to be considering all the factors that touch the project that I'm doing. For instance, if I'm building a logo for a client, this will affect their other sales material, their website, things like that. I'm considering all of the potential touch points and hurdles the client may not have identified and leverage this to increase my value to the client, something we'll be getting into detail later on in this presentation. And expertise. Expertise does not happen by osmosis. I wish it did. You have to go get it. Investing in yourself, your skills, your education, your network, these pay back in dividends over time. You have already taken a great step by joining us here on this presentation. And then you are an independent professional. You decide which clients you invest your time and skills with and how much you're willing to do it for. So pick the correct clients, charge what aligns with your value. Do you get there overnight? Not typically, but we're here to do the work, right? So let's dive in, determining your value. So before we can successfully raise your rates, a key factor you need to determine is your value. And this is a topic that we speak on in many of our events, creating value. Sometimes this comes in the form of specific skills or software knowledge. Sometimes it comes in the form of the soft benefits to the client, like your ability to go above and beyond with high quality and thoughtful service in addition to your primary objective. We recently held an event on market trends and in-demand skills, which provided some great insight as to some suggested upskilling recommendations in specific industry verticals. I believe it was marketing, tech, and customer service. And these are based upon demand that we're seeing from clients. So it's a great resource to see if some of your skills are in high demand from the client perspective. Tiffany, what are some of your thoughts when it comes to determining your value?
So what we see as coaches is, especially when you're just getting started on Upwork, you're often really not putting in the thought to these things that Will has been talking about when it comes to determining your value, and are kind of just almost taking a stab guess at what you think is the appropriate value. And there are different ways that you can understand your value, kind of do that research and anchor that price point in something that's real and reasonable and matches the market. And there's a lot of reasons why you want to do that. Because if you're too low or too high, you're going to have some different struggles and different problems when it comes to getting started. So you definitely want to put in the research and not just guess.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best benchmarks that I've used in my process to set or raise my rates was to take a look at what my peers and the top producers in my specific vertical are charging. I'm checking to see if I'm working at a similar level of expertise and using other talents' existing success at certain rates as a benchmark or a sanity check. Tiffany, can you walk us through how we can check out who are our peers and who are the top producers in the category that we work in?
Yeah, this is a great way to start doing some of that research. So, when you're on the Upwork page and you're signed in, right, you can go to the top. You see there in the graphic that search box. Now, a lot of people don't realize you can click that little arrow, see it there next to the magnifying glass, and you get this drop down list that says jobs, talent, and projects. If you select talent, you can then search for all the other talent profiles on the platform. You can put a keyword in there. So if you're working in marketing or social media, and you put a keyword like that in there, it's going to give you more specific profiles. But if you just click enter, here's what you're going to see. And so you can start to look for those subcategories. You see those over on the side. Maybe click some other things that are kind of relevant to you. So maybe you're looking at and then you can see, hey, what are they charging? What would be a reasonable rate for someone very much like me to then compare to? Again, you want to align with that market so that you're meeting those client expectations and you're not kind of wildly too low or too high.
Yeah, another thing that I utilized it for. So I went in there with first time with an aim of just finding my comparable doppelganger and seeing what I should be charging. And then I noticed when I was scrolling through a lot of the people that were in here, I was looking at 5-star rating, 90% plus JSS, things of that nature, looking for the people that are really crushing it. And I noticed a consistent theme in their portfolio items. They were presenting it in a way that was much more polished than what I was doing at the time. I'm in graphic design, so I was just taking the design and just slapping it in there. I noticed that the professionals in my field were taking that and photoshopping it into what they call a lifestyle image. So if I designed a website, I wouldn't just take a screenshot of the website. I'd take that screenshot and Photoshop it onto a stock image where someone's looking at a computer screen, for example. But using techniques like that, I was able to sort of crowdsource some best practices on how to elevate my presentation. So hugely important tool. All right.
Yeah, we can get a lot of insight just looking at other people's profiles and how they're marketing themselves.
Totally. And so many people do it so many different directions. And what works for one person may not necessarily directly translate to you, but it can be inspiring for you to try different directions, which I've found helpful. So next up, we have pricing can indicate quality. Now, I find this topic fascinating. A lot of independent professionals can start off by trying to land projects by slashing their prices to attract those first clients. Now, while this may have some success for a percentage of folks, it ends up working against you at a point. If I offer to make you a website for $5,000, that may or may not seem like a relatively high number, depending on the level that I'm designing at. However, let's take that same website, but this time I'm offering it to you for $20. Immediately, you're going to be like, wait, what's wrong with it? Is it going to break on me? Is this going to be using super outdated tech or design elements? Are you going to ghost me halfway through the project? I immediately think that. The point being that charging really low rates may seem like a sweet trick to get started, but can often lead to a lack of work, or in my opinion, even worse, a heavy burden of underpaid work that you get completely burnt out on. Well, what are your thoughts on this, Tiffany?
Yeah, as a coach, this is one of the primary things that talent kind of, talk to us about when we ask, hey, what is your big hurdle right now? A lot of it is, I started working on Upwork at a rate way too low. How can I actually adjust myself to a more marketable rate? Because once you've established some work history on your profile at $5 or $10 an hour or whatever you're discounting to, when you really should be somewhere in the 30s or 40s, it really is very difficult to kind of dig yourself out of that hole. And yeah, clients kind of get this this mentality about quality and the kind of experience that you're going to give and whether or not you consider yourself to be a professional. And so you really have to think about it from that other point of view. You don't necessarily want to work with someone who's giving that vibe that you're giving. So you're like, think about that. how you're portraying yourself when you make those discounts. Most clients realize that they want high quality, they want a professional, that's going to come with a reasonable price tag. And if you're discounting yourself, you might just be removing yourself from those clients' view entirely.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring up. It is a reflection of how you value your own services as well, and it could definitely lead to some insecurity of like, I'm not looking to work with someone who's brand new to doing this. So it's good to be aware of. Interesting point just dropped in the chat I want to share with the group, and I had a similar experience. This person states, I didn't make any money until I upped my rates 4 times from my beginning. Same. I didn't do it 4 times. I wish I had. I doubled it, and I thought that I was crazy for doubling my rate. But the day that I doubled my rates, I got invites to good jobs. I halved the amount of proposals I was sending out because people were responding. I was delivering the same work the day before as I was the next day, but my life got way easier. So again, playing around with it, but I'm glad to hear that other people have had that similar sort of experience. So next up, let's dive into increasing your rates. So Upwork is a fantastically large worldwide marketplace. We have independent professionals and clients all around the world with a great stream of fresh projects being posted all the time. This means that you have the ability to really stop and consider what your ideal work situation looks like. What type of clients do you want to work with, and how much do you want to do that work for? What are some of the major considerations when deciding on a new raised rate, Tiffany?
Yeah, so a lot of the things that you have listed here, I see a lot of talent who just bid the same rate for every project, not taking complexity or maybe even other considerations into play. I was actually talking with someone about this morning who is a WordPress developer, and he said, I'm going to start charging more when the client is hosted on a hosting platform that's less than ideal because it takes me more time to do my job. And I was like, I think that's perfectly reasonable. It adds complexity, it adds time to your work, then it needs to be billed at a higher rate. Things like education. And I know a lot of times you're out there continuing to learn, maybe gaining new certifications, taking a course, all of those kinds of things. And so it's not a fixed thing, your rate. We really want to continue to decide and change based on our education or certifications or kind of what we've been doing with our skills. And then, yeah, geographic location is a big one. What are the standard rates in your client's location, or are they looking for talent specifically in your area? And then like, what is the market rate for that? I know a lot of times people think, oh, well, I'm located in a lower cost of living area. Clients are looking for me because they can pay me less, but we really don't see that is what happens. Not kind of on the general scale of things. Again, clients want great outcomes. They want professionals. They come to Upwork because they have a problem and they need you to solve it. And they're going to pay a reasonable rate to get that done. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that you can take into consideration when you're trying to choose your rate.
Yeah, totally. And maybe a good example of like how to determine the geographic differences in rates. Like if I were trying to land a job in the UK, perhaps I would look at some of my talent peers that are working in the UK, doing work for UK companies and seeing what are they charging. That might be a good place for me to sort of find that benchmark if I have no idea to begin with. But that'd be where I'd start. So continuing on this same topic, this top bullet point is a lesson that took me a long time to get comfortable with. Maybe others here are more adventurous than me about this type of thing, but I have a bad habit of sticking at a price point for a little bit too long. But I'm getting better at it, and I definitely agree with the wisdom that playing with your rate is a constant and important exercise. I also leverage the specialized profiles at different rates now. So I primarily focus on branding as one specialization and deck creation as the other specialized profile. And I charge significantly different rates for these types of jobs due to my extensive background in deck building and presenting. And I'm able to facilitate those projects with a much higher level of expertise. So I charge accordingly. What are some of the other considerations that may come to mind, Tiffany?
Yeah, the point about it not being a fixed, some of us joined and then 3-4 years later, we're still charging the same rates, and we're not the same people. If you've been freelancing for a while, your skills have changed, you've completed trainings, courses, certifications, give yourself a raise. You have earned it. And yeah, you want to think about those kinds of things. And you also want to think about, when the part about testing different rates, people get scared when we say, I think the problem is that your rate is too low, that they have to just change their rates. And then overnight, everyone is going to think that, I'm way overpriced now, or they're all going to laugh at me. I don't know who's doing the laughing, but nobody's laughing. Definitely try out some different rates. Go back to, again, looking at your competition, comparing yourself to those other market rates. And, it's okay to try to bid a little higher to kind of see what kind of response that you get. And it may not be the rate that you settle on, because sometimes there's negotiation involved, but there is no harm in trying out some new things and kind of seeing what the market will bear. And again, thinking about project complexity, your time, or if there are specialized tools involved. I know for some designers and things, that software is quite pricey. And if you're paying to use that software to complete client work, kind of think about how you're building that into your pricing to make sure that you're giving you and your business a fair shot at growth and what you actually should be earning. Don't cut yourself short.
Yeah, I noticed I don't do a lot of video editing. I do some video editing, and I was doing a video project for a long-time client of mine. So I have a stock still image account, Adobe stock image, and that's relatively cheap, a monthly thing. And I was thinking stock videos, probably the same, no worries. I go to get some stock videos and they're like $600 for a 20-second clip. I'm talking quality. You can get them for dirt cheap, but they're not very good that I found. If you got better recommendations, drop them in the chat. But I noticed that the required to facilitate the job were obviously, so my bid on the job had to adapt to manage that, or else I'd have lost money on it, or produced something that was a lower quality that the client would have burnt out on. So it's interesting to be aware of those different factors which change.
Absolutely.
So it's important to be aware that raising your rates is just one method of increasing your earnings. Outside of just increasing our rates on our profiles or job bids, what are some other ways that we can look to increase our earnings on Upwork?
Yeah, you have some great examples here on the slides. I think there's a lot of talent who do not think about kind of bundling or upselling their clients to kind of start to earn more. And I personally will hire on Upwork for things that I need done. And I've had this happen where people will upsell me. And yeah, I think that's a great strategy. So really thinking about, I'm offering this service right now. What would be a complementary service that a client might also buy from me? Or are they hiring someone else to complete like a second part of this project? Then can I learn those skills and offer that as kind of a bundle deal? So there's different ways that you can kind of think about, how can I look for ways to improve my client's experience? Because a lot of people, they kind of get, I don't know, turned off by the idea of selling. But you don't have to think of it that way, right? You are helping the client with their problem. They don't have to then post a job, go through the screening, go through, finding another person to do this other part of the job. If you are already doing a great job for them and you've proved yourself, then yeah, they definitely just want to hire you to do the rest of it. That saves them so much more time. And then the recurring revenue stream. I see this a lot in the software developers that I work with, really starting to think about, hey, how can I have a maintenance contract or an agreement for services after I'm done delivering your project? Can we sign up for, a couple of months of, fixes or additions or tweaks, beyond delivery? Don't just hand the work off to the client and wave goodbye. How can you continue to kind of work with this person and support the work that you've created? And they don't, again, have to go find someone to do that. You don't want to find out that a past client reposted a job that you could have taken because they weren't sure that you were available or that you had those skills. So you have to tell people what you can do, and kind of, you do have to kind of sell it, but really make sure that you are, communicating that. Or they may not know that you can also design the website as well as build it. Or, hey, I've got this mobile app in Android. Can you also build it in iOS? Like, what skill sets do you have? They may not think to go look. So really consider how you're communicating to your current clients so that you can kind of hook. You've already got them hooked.
Right. You've already done the heavy
keep them
lifting.
on board.
You got that attention. You've already proven yourself to deliver quality results and communicate well. So you'd be totally missing money on the table by not going for that upsell, I believe would be the correct way of categorizing it.
Yeah. And looking at how we are categorizing things like job success score and qualifications for top rated and top rated plus, those repeat contracts, way more.
And also factor in the point that as you hit different benchmarks with the same client, the Upwork fees go down. So
Absolutely.
I believe it starts at 20 and then it drops down once you get above $500 to, I want to say 10%. And then once you get to $10,000 with a client, then it drops down to 5%. So longevity with your clients is you're not spending time putting out proposals. You're doing billable hours. You're taking more of that money home. I mean, it's a win-win-win across the board.
And that's cumulative per client. It doesn't all have to be on one contract. So,
right.
If they hit you up 10 times for $50, $100 contracts, those all add up in the total.
Definitely. All right. Next up, let's look at navigating rate increase conversations. Now, this can be nerve-wracking for some people. My first time doing it, I was sweating bullets and I was like, I'm going to lose all my clients. No one's going to want to work with me. It didn't happen that way. It went very smoothly, Kristen. But it's all well and good to increase your rates, and we support you doing this. But if you can't back up your new price points with existing or potential clients, you're going to face some uncomfortable challenges. Are you updating your profile and portfolio frequently with new projects and updated skill sets as you progress? Do your historical client reviews match what you state you are offering? What soft skills seems to be called out multiple times in those reviews? For example, he's so organized, he goes the extra mile to ensure we have what we need. If you see a consistent theme along these reviews, call it out. That increases value. What are some of the other tips you can share with us on analyzing and justifying our new rates?
Yeah, going back to what I was talking about previously about, I started at a low rate. How do I adjust to a marketable rate? This is part of that conversation, because you have this work history of low rates and now you want to raise yourself to what you should have been in the first place, right? A good market value. And you do sometimes get pushback, hey, I saw you did this project 3 months ago. It was very similar and you charged that guy way less. So why are you charging me so much? A short written statement about maybe something has your skill set. Are you adding different skills or services or using a new tool or something that would cause your rates to be higher? Are, again, calling out those things from your reviews are great. Hey, I have a track record of great quality and delivering on time, and look at my feedback, and that you're going to get a good experience with me. Calling those things out really helps solidify in the client's mind that you did that for them and you're going to do that for me. And really thinking about, because again, going back to that idea that clients come to Upwork because they have a problem and they're looking for a professional to solve it. So how are you going to help them? If you can really connect those dots for the client of, this is what I can do for you and it's going to be great, and you're never going to have to worry about whether it's not going to be great, then click, you're hired, right? They just want this problem gone. They don't want to spend all their time interviewing and finding somebody. It's totally. No, that's not fun. I can tell you from the client perspective, it's not fun. And it's time consuming and it's stressful. And I just want someone to do this work for me right now.
Totally.
And so, yeah. So when you're justifying your rates, like, have that statement written out, like have a little, like, kind of holistic idea of like, what do I need to tell people? But you also need to practice, whether you're practicing with like a roommate or a spouse or someone who you could just like practice saying this. Saying it out loud will make you believe it. And if you believe it, the client will believe it. Whether this is a written or verbal conversation, you have to believe what you're saying, that you're worth more.
100%. And I love the idea of practicing that with someone. And I'd even add on to that to say, the more ignorant the person is on what you do, like I wouldn't want to talk to another graphic designer who understands all my terminology. I want to speak to my mum who is very unfamiliar with the whole process. And if she doesn't understand my validation and my reason why I'm worth more, then I'm not communicating it well. So I would advocate for finding someone who is wholly ignorant on what you do and bounce it off them.
Yeah, even if it's just kind of a bulleted list of the things that you've thought about, and then you can kind of turn that into some statements. Yeah, putting that together in the preparation is important.
There's a great comment in the chat here I wanted to call out. Two, actually. This person was thinking about raising their rates for quick turnaround time projects. I do the same thing. You got this rate for your average, 3-day turnaround. You need it tomorrow. Guess what? We just added 150% to what that cost. People are happy to do it. They understand that you have a process, you have clients. You're not just sitting there waiting for a project to land for the most part, or at least I hope you're not. And the other one that was brought up here, this person once submitted to a job that said they had a budget of $100 and they quoted $3,000 as a price and they landed the job. You know what? I've had a similar experience. I'm so glad to hear. I love hearing from other people getting a similar thing. It's one thing for me to say it, and another thing when it's echoed throughout our community. And one other important thing that I want to bring up, we've mentioned a few times now that, if you bid real low on a job, your work history is filled up with real low price rates, which can be a bit of a red flag for a client. There is the ability with the Upwork Plus membership, which has a variety of benefits. I use it today. I used it when I first started, and I still use it today. I find it valuable, not mandatory, but valuable. One of the things that comes along with it is, if I'm not mistaken, every 3 months, you have the ability to submit a request to support to remove a client feedback from your history. Now, the initial thought is to use that to get rid of a negative review. But if you don't have any negative reviews you need to get rid of, and you've raised your price, it might be time, assuming you have a lot of good reviews at the rate you want, to start removing some of those cheapo jobs you did in the beginning to leave you with just those higher rates. That was actually a recommendation I learned from one of the members or one of the attendees of one of these events. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I like it because I definitely did some cheapo jobs in the beginning and I'm like, oh no, I'm never doing it for that ever again. So I bet the majority of us here have gone through or are perhaps still in the process of trying to stack up some positive reviews to get better visibility for clients on Upwork. It can be a tough hurdle to conquer. So some of the best advice I have learned is to ensure you're keeping your communications client-centric. Tiffany, you brought this up a few times. Now, whether that's in your profile, in your proposals, or in your interview, keeping client-focused is an effective way to stack up some great reviews and grants you the ability to lean against your reviews and measurable results when acquiring new projects. So what are some of the ways that we can track our results and stay client-focused?
Yeah, I love these prompts here. I'm sure everyone can probably think of some different things that are, very focused on their industry, of things I've done for clients. And then, either it came out in feedback, it came out in conversation when you delivered the final project. Top quotes, little things that you've highlighted and pasted in there. Again, later when you're trying to put together that statement of why am I worth more? Or maybe you're trying to think about, I need to rewrite my overview because it's been a while and I want to make sure it's fresh. These are the kinds of things that you can lean on to really talk about how you helped clients, because that's the language and the tone that gets the best results. A lot of times we're very focused on us. I can do, I have these skills, but it's really kind of difficult for clients who, again, are focused in that problem brain of theirs to think, well, they can do this and I have similar thing. Are those the same? Can you connect those dots for me? Mm-hmm. But if you start talking about results that you achieved, then that's easy. I want those results too. How can you do that for me? I don't need you to connect the dots. I want that. And so, yeah, thinking about those tangible outcomes, grabbing those little snippets, putting them in a file just so that you have them when the time comes, that's valuable.
Totally. An interesting point you brought up, and something that I've learned over doing marketing and graphic design over the years. Expecting that your client will connect dots or has time to connect dots is a foolish mistake. They may well have the wherewithal to do it, but they're not just talking to you. They're talking to you and 60 other people, which is 2% of their day's work. They don't have the time. They're not going to volunteer the time for them to try and connect the dots on the story you're trying to craft. Make it about them. One of the things that I think you brought it up in one of our previous events on a similar topic was taking I statements and sort of framing them differently. My takeaway from that was, let's say I could say in my proposal, I'm good at Photoshop. The client says, bully for you, that's fantastic. I could say, I leverage my extensive knowledge of Photoshop to ensure your projects are curated professionally. That finishes the story, that connects the dot, because I'm good at Photoshop has nothing to do with the client, but I use the fact that I'm good at Photoshop to make sure your projects rock. That relates to the client. It's the same statement, just sort of reframed a little bit. I thought that was hugely valuable.
Just a small side tangent here. You're bringing up a good point also, that we assume the client knows the jargon, knows the tools, knows those keywords that we're using. You know, if you're not a software developer and you're looking for a software developer, it is a landmine of acronyms and just words that they do not understand. All they want to know is, can you make my app for the iPhone? And so I know that sometimes you do want to, I'm not saying don't take that stuff out, but you need to make sure that you are thinking about it in client-centric language that's friendly to that kind of client. Because it's off-putting, it's confusing. And so, make sure that we're thinking about that.
It could also be a little bit intimidating. I've worked on the client side before I ever became a freelancer on the platform. I started on the client side hiring graphic designers. And I remember when I was hiring for a software engineering sort of job, I was intimidated by all the acronyms. It was usually a bit austere and, hey, I'm really good at this. Here's 17 acronyms, message me. And I was like, I don't know what any of these are. I don't want to look like an idiot. No, I don't think anyone wants to look like an idiot. So I didn't reach out to a lot of those people. Even though they may have been absolute rock stars, it lacked a bit of warmth and maybe compassion for the reader's viewpoint, making it client-centric as opposed to, I don't work in that space. So very, very important factors. So when it comes to fixed price contracts, it seems like there's some some techniques that we can try to assist us in finding adjusted rates, which will work for the clients we're aiming for. Can you walk us through some of the pointers on negotiations on fixed price contracts?
Yeah, and I think fixed price projects have kind of the same thing that happens with the hourly rate, is sometimes we're guessing. We're picking a number that we think sounds reasonable, or we're just bidding the client's budget and the client has no idea. More often than not, when we talk with clients as coaches, they're kind of, either they do have a budget in mind and they kind of need to stay within that, but a lot of times they don't know what their budget should be. And so they're just kind of pulling a number out of the hat as well. So really time to think about, what is the work actually involved? What is your time worth? It does not have to have anything to do with the stated hourly rate on your profile if that's not appropriate. Really think about that complexity, what's necessary, and kind of do the math. What is this going to take? Are there things that you're going to need to purchase, or that, are there other costs associated with the work that maybe you're not considering? But really kind of sit down and think about what that number should be. And you can justify it in your proposal. If the client has kind of an outlandish bid, the budget number, then think about, how can you present that to the client as why that's not correct? Again, going back to, here's how I can solve your problem. I'm a professional. Here's my, track record in all of my education. Here's my breakdown of why it's not 300, it's 700. If you hire me, yes, it's worth it. You're going to have a great outcome. But, if that's not the number they're expecting, you're at least justifying why it's that way. Now, they might find someone to do it for 300, and then they might regret that. Who knows?
Yeah, I use an example. There's a meme out there that was on the same topic, but I've used it in conversations in the real world where logo project, and someone's like, well, so and so will do it for $50 and I'm charging $300, and I send them 2 image examples. I'm like, here is a $50 logo, and it's like drawn in paint. And I'm like, here is a $300 logo. I'm like, anyone can give you a $50 logo, but I'm not sure if you want it.
Right. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the bluntness of the statement of saying, well, then just go hire the other guy.
No, that's a bit abrasive.
Yeah, I think you can definitely kind of try to salvage the situation. Maybe there is room for negotiation if they're willing to come up on their budget. I do get sometimes that pushback of, I do want to hire you. You're perfect. I love your work. I love your profile, but I can't afford this price. Could you come down to somewhere in the middle? And then at that point you can decide, is it still too little, or do you want the work? Do you want the client relationship? Does this seem like a good person you want to work for? Really thinking about those things as well. And then decide.
I've leveraged that same situation. Like I've done quite a bit of work for nonprofit organizations, which typically have lower budget than C Corps. And I've leveraged those where if I have time in my day that I can justify taking a lower rate, I can augment it with other work, I have the space, I will accept them, but I will sort of prompt it and plant the seed, be like, hey, I typically charge this rate. I'd love to work with you guys. I like working with nonprofit organizations. In return, a glowing recommendation, once you're thrilled with the work, will go a long way to supplementing the difference between the two. Planting that seed, and then I get these fantastic reviews from them that are very heartfelt, and they say, if you have any questions, contact. So you can get reimbursed in a different way when using that testimonial to land other jobs. So there is definitely a time where you can not take money so much as take value in a different sense.
Right. No, that's very true. So yeah, and it's ultimately up to you. If it's not a good fit budget wise and they still aren't able to meet you at a place that you're comfortable, you're not obligated to take the work. They'll find somebody. It'll be okay. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're working for a fee that you're not comfortable with. Because then you're losing money and you start to feel resentful and you don't necessarily then want to keep that client relationship, or it goes stale over time. So really kind of taking that into consideration.
Totally. Now, when it comes to changing your pricing structure with existing or long-term clients, it's important to be polite, professional, but most of all, as you mentioned, confident. Approaching a rate change conversation as a question invites being challenged. Hey, would you mind if You're just inviting challenge. I've found that providing my clients with my new rate, date they take effect, and why they want to continue utilizing my service at this new rate has been effective for me, just from my personal experience. For example, it'll read something along the lines of, as I have increased my skills in X, Y, and Z areas since we began working together in January of 2020, I'm increasing my rates from $30 an hour to $40 an hour to ensure I'm able to continue providing the high level of service and quality deliverables my clients have come to expect working with me. It's professional, it's confident. I'm not asking a question, I'm letting them know, and I'm explaining why I'm doing it. And at the end, I'll typically say, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'll leave an area for them to have some commentary, but this is happening, and here's why you want to partake. And I've found that no one's squeaked so far. Some people have said, I can't really do 40. Could we do 38? Things of that nature. That's the most pushback I've got. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. So do you have any other pointers for us on how we can approach these conversations with existing clients?
The confidence is definitely key. And I find that this to be a very cultural topic, because in some countries, negotiation is everything. I visited some countries where it feels like I negotiated for every moment of my life, every meal, every service. That's just the way it works. But like for those of us in the United States, we don't negotiate for really much of anything. And so we're very not practiced at it and not good at it. And some people really shy away from it, feeling like it's confrontational. And it's not. It really isn't. But it does require some preparation and some practice. Or the moment that they sense weakness and you're not confident and that you might wiggle, they're gonna push and you're gonna back off. And then not only did you try to raise your rates and you were not successful, but now the client has kind of a weird perception about you. And it's not a good one. So you want to build that statement, like use one of these prompts or kind of put it in your own words in that professional statement of here's what's happening and why. And then you're not asking a question. If they don't like it, fear is I'm going to lose clients. If they don't like it, they're not just going to be like, okay, bye. They're going to push back and negotiate. So
Yeah, I've not
yeah,
lost a single client like disappearing. I thought for sure half my book was going to be like, well, see you later, Will. No, not a single person disappeared. I had a few people that wanted to have a conversation, but no one just dropped me.
I would also recommend, like you said, if you've got questions, let me know, but don't open that door too wide, because it really
Yeah.
isn't a conversation. But yeah, I think if you've got proper justification, you backed it up, again, with those statements and things that we've talked about, you're not doing anything outlandish, like going from 70 to 200, you're well within market rates, everything, should be fine with the client. And so, yeah, everyone always gets very scared, and I get it. For many of our talent on the platform, this is their full-time thing. Their clients on Upwork pay the roof over their head. So it can feel scary when you might think that you're going to push those people away, but in practice, and what we've seen, this is my 4th year at Upwork doing this. It's not a common thing for clients to just bail.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard that from a lot of other freelancers as well. So it's not just my experience or your experience. This is a common theme that I've heard, that is relatively safe, as long as, I will put a huge caveat, asterisk there, as long as you are polite about it. If you are super abrasive or just kind of aggressive in your delivery, I would turn away. If someone suddenly turned out to be a bit nasty with me, I'd be like, I don't want to work with you. So keep in mind, we are all still humans. Be nice, but be confident and assertive.
Polite and professional.
Exactly, polite and professional. So we have quite a few questions here. I've just been cruising through some of those. Let's see how many we can get to here.
Awesome.
So this is a topic that we touched on earlier. Let me go a little bit more detail. Some job offers, some projects provide ridiculously low compensation rates. I'm assuming that's in the posting, their budget's real low. Should I apply anyway and ask for a higher rate? We talked about this earlier. Don't worry about what the client put in the budget. It's somewhat of a reference point, but as you mentioned it just a minute ago, Tiffany, oftentimes the client has no idea what they should be charging. They have to fill out that number when they're posting the job, but they don't know how many zeros are supposed to be on the end of it. They're just going to put something. And that plays into sort of another question here, where they're saying basically it was a animation project, 5-minute video, where the client was saying, hey, this is a $200 project. And this attendee is saying, this is clearly starting at $2,000. That's a vastly different budget. I've had similar experiences. How would you approach that conversation, Tiffany?
Yeah, when you do get those situations where the client's kind of making way too low budgets, you can write that proposal. You can try to open that conversation. This could just be one of those situations where the client just literally took a stab and stuck a number in there because if they had a reasonable idea and maybe had done any market research, they probably would not be so wildly off base. So the best you can do is write that proposal, state your case, lay it out for them. Why are you qualified? Why is the project worth this much? What is the investment that they would be making in order to get a good outcome? And see if they're open to even talking about it. If they walk into, and we do see this sometimes, where they're like, hey, I just had zero idea that something was this expensive and I only have $200. Well, the blunt answer is come back when you have more money, but that's not what you would say. But that is what they're going to have to do in order to get any kind of reasonable outcome for their project. It's just something that happens sometimes when people have no idea what goes into something.
It's like that
the
common
stock photos.
Yeah. And another thing that comes up, anyone in the tech side of things has heard this before. Like I'm doing WordPress design, and the client will be like, "Oh, well, we just need to make it do a video over here. That's only a 2-second update." And you're like, "No, there is no such thing as a 2-second update on these types of projects." I'm like, you're looking at 4 hours of work and 16 years of knowledge to get this done in 4 hours. So it's sometimes we just have to educate the client a bit. And I think that leads in quite well to another point that's brought up here, is qualifying prospective clients is critical. This is something that I know we've brought up in some of our previous events, and I try and plug it in as many events as I can. I used to say yes to every client that wanted to work with me. I was just hungry for jobs. I didn't know what I was going to niche down to. I was just doing design in general, everything from videos to website. I had no idea. So I just say yes. I quickly got burnt out on doing jobs that I didn't want to do, working with clients that perhaps were not the right personality type for me. Not saying they're bad clients, they just weren't the right fit for me. I work a specific way, they work another way. So qualifying those prospective clients is critical. Look for the red flags. Look at the reviews the previous freelancers that have worked with them have written. Look at the average rate that they pay. Look at the wording in their proposal. There's a lot of ways that you can identify who this person is that you're engaging with before you engage with them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It is important to think about that client vetting, like working on projects you actually want to do for people that you like and want to interact with, and that don't leave a bad taste in your mouth every time you have to, like if you're cringing every time you need to send them a message because they're so abrasive and hard to work with, and what are you doing? There's so many other great clients to work with.
Yeah, totally. I'm just reading through some of the questions here. Give me just a moment. Okay, this is a great question. They're saying, how do you reasonably justify bidding a higher rate than the rate you have listed in your profile? That's my boiled down version of that statement. That's a very good thing to bring up. You want to take that one, Tiffany?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to the way you're writing your proposal and the justification. So, talking about the complexity, taking into account what the client is asking for, I usually like to point out that the rate on my profile is the base rate. That is the lowest I would ever bid anything. And so that's my starting point. And then I add from there. Is there a rush? Is there complexity? Is there something specific they like, tools or something I need to purchase? Am I going to have to go do some sourcing? Is there something that's part of this that maybe isn't something I would normally do, but I'll bundle it in and go ahead and do that too? Like, I'm adding all of those things in. And so when you write that proposal, it needs to be clear why you're quoting the price that you're quoting, whether it's hourly or fixed price. You can kind of write up a breakdown or some bullet points, or just say, you don't need to like, oh, it's $10 for this and it's $40 for that. Like, here's all the things that factor into my rate, and just kind of lay them out, and how much time maybe you think that it's going to take, so that they have an accurate idea of what we're talking about in terms of time, or especially for hourly projects. So yeah, I don't really think that that's a red flag for anybody, unless you're doing something just wildly different. If your profile rate is $75 and you're bidding this job and it's like 90 or something, I would still think that's probably in line if
Totally.
they're asking for something more. But if your rate is typically 50 and suddenly it's like, why is this $200 an hour?
Yeah.
What's changed? Yeah. So
and
I think
it may
just
be
adding some
justifiable, but
justification.
you'd have to. Yeah, totally. Great question here. Is the rate changeable after you submit a proposal? This is a super important topic, especially with longer term clients where you have continuing work with them. I'm going to say the short answer is yes. Do you want to give the long answer?
Well, it does involve, you have to withdraw the proposal, you've got to make your changes, and then you resubmit it. And so the client does get a little notification when you do that. But you can't just go in there and change it once it's been submitted. You have to withdraw it, make your changes, and then you can send it back over. And the client will get not only a little notification that you've withdrawn and that whatever, but it'll show up in the message room that you've made that change as well. But if that's happening a lot, outside of a conversation, like if they've opened a conversation with you about your proposal and then they want to talk about it and negotiate and the rate changes, that's different. You're not withdrawing and doing anything at that point. They're just going to hire you and put a different rate when they go to hire you. Yeah. But if you're making proposals and then backtracking on them a lot, really think about that. Maybe you're just going too fast.
Yeah, totally. And there's a good point brought up in the chat here by one of our attendees. They were just stating that they're gonna try raising their rates because their schedule is full. That is a great indicator that it's time to increase your rates.
Yep.
If your schedule is full and there's still more clients that want to work with you, great, you're doing fantastic work. But you could raise that rate until your schedule gets to just the right size.
Yep.
So important
I
indicator.
have that conversation quite often, that when you are turning away work, you are not charging enough.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Easy question here. How can we identify an enterprise client? So enterprise clients, oftentimes enterprise jobs are invite only, listed as private, meaning that either the client themselves or an Upwork representatives is looking at people and then matchmaking that way. So keep your profile, your skill tags up to date. Otherwise, if it is a publicly listed job on the job feed, you'll see a little blue icon of a phone booth. I think it looks just like the TARDIS from Doctor Who, but that denotes them as the enterprise client. So you will always know if it's an enterprise client. It is very clearly labeled. If you go into the support section on Upwork and type in enterprise client, there's a whole article on it where you can see exactly what I'm talking about, but very easy to identify. And I would argue usually a good idea to aim at enterprise clients if you have the bandwidth, skill, and workload to accommodate it. Those are typically longer term projects and oftentimes much higher paying. So I like to aim for those. Let me see here. We could probably squeeze in a couple more questions. So a couple people are saying that they increase their rates and they're still not really getting a lot of responses to their proposals. I will share a technique that I strongly suggest. And it took a process that previously was taking me about 3 months to dial in and got it dialed in about 2 weeks. That is A/B testing. If you're not familiar with A/B testing, do a quick Google. But the concept is in your proposals, obviously you don't want to just copy and paste your proposal from client to client to client. It doesn't work. You're wasting connects and you're wasting your time and their time. That's not to say that you can't use a framework for your proposal. I have a framework for my proposal, and all 99% of my proposals use this same framework. Intro, addressing the job, why I'm a good fit, to any history or specifics. Do you need it for print? Do you need it for digital? Showing understanding. And then third paragraph, about me. That's my framework. You can use that framework, and then the way you find the framework that works is the A/B testing. I try this framework and I apply to 5 jobs. Then I slightly modify it, and that's B, and I try that on 5 jobs. If A gets 3 responses and B gets 0 responses, scrap B, take A, great. Try another modification of it. You keep doing that until you find, obviously, and it took me about 2 weeks to do, I found the format that works for Will. And now when I write a proposal, 90% of the time I get a response, which is great. I went from doing 30 proposals a week to about 4 a month. So it works.
Fantastic idea.
Let me see. In regards to how to request that a review is removed from your profile, you have to have the Plus membership, and I believe you submit to support. You submit a request, hey, I'd like to remove. I would suggest first step for you is go into the support section of Upwork. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, the help center, very well indexed. Just type remove review, something to that degree. It'll give you the steps, the links directly to it. But I would suggest that if you're looking to accomplish that.
But let's say you underbid yourself and you've got all these jobs on your profile at like $20 an hour and you're trying to get to 45. You really can't take that in too big a leaps, maybe only $5. So maybe you start bidding projects at $25 and then you win one. And then once that's on your profile, you start making more proposals at 30, and then you win one, and then you make one at 35, and you've got to work up some history of these rate increases to get to that point where you want to be. And that will also build that history on your profile of these rate increases and push those lower rates off of the first page. wage. And so you can't usually make big jumps. Sometimes you can do $10. Really kind of think depends on the job category.
Totally.
But slow increases where you win a job slightly higher, win a job slightly higher, and climb your way up there, generally get better results and less pushback. Clients aren't going to look at your profile and go, oh, you did this work for 20 and now it's 25. I'm not even going to say anything, right? They're not going to push back, and you're not going to have that kind of confrontation where you think you need to defend yourself. So yeah, little increases. If you try to make big leaps, you got to be ready to defend it, and then it may not work.
I definitely, when I started doing my rate increases over the course of 6 months, I think I raised my rates 4 times because I was doing bite-sized increments. And then I got a little bit more
and what you charge now, and thinking about all the money you were leaving on the table. That's that's the face right there.
Yeah.
Oh no, what have I
the
done?
The one that was worse for me is looking at my very first design projects years ago. I look at it and I'm like, oh no, someone paid me money for this. I'm like, I've come a long way, and hopefully everyone else has too.
Yeah, I think all of us, that's where that imposter syndrome will get you, because you look at old work and you're like, oh gosh, who paid me for that? I'm not good enough.
Folks, it's been a great time. We got to call it for today. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, and have a great rest of the week.